Fleet Commander Zornthal of the Greyer species adjusted his ceremonial armor, the gleaming purple-black plates catching the artificial light of the Eternal Glory's Grand Assembly Hall. Today marked a historic occasion, the formal integration of humanity into the Galactic Confederation. His four golden eyes narrowed slightly as he observed the human delegation entering through the massive doors at the far end of the hall. Primitives, he muttered to his aide, Lieutenant Krell. Look at them. Barely a century of space travel under their belts, and already they presume to join our ranks. The council decision was unanimous, Commander, Krell replied diplomatically. Their technological advancement rate is unprecedented. Zornthal scoffed, the ridges on his forehead deepening with contempt. Technology stolen or reverse-engineered from crashed Confederation vessels, no doubt. The Greyer Empire took 3 centuries to develop warp capacity. These humans did it in less than 70 years. The Greyer were the military backbone of the Confederation, 8 feet tall, exoskeletal, bred for combat in environments ranging from gas giants to vacuum. For 12 generations, they had served as the galaxy's peacekeepers and warriors. Zornthal himself had suppressed 17 planetary revolts and commanded the defense fleet during the Hive War. The medals adorning his chest plate told a story of battle prowess unmatched in the Confederation. And now, these humans, soft, small, from a backwater solar system, were being welcomed as equals. They conquered nothing to earn their place, Zornthal continued. The Council grows soft, allowing such species entry based solely on potential and diplomatic goodwill. They did survive 3 extinction-level events on their homeworld, Commander, Krell noted. Their adaptability is considered remarkable. Surviving is not conquering. Zornthal's voice lowered to a growl. Let us see if they can survive the rigors of true Confederation service. The delegation approached. At its head walked Admiral Maxwell, an older human with silver hair and eyes that betrayed more intelligence than Zornthal was comfortable acknowledging. Behind him came a row of what the humans called cadets, military students, not yet full officers. Zornthal found the concept laughable. The Greyer did not send children to diplomatic functions. The formal introductions proceeded according to protocol. Species representatives made speeches. The ancient Velian ambassador droned on about unity in diversity, and various dignitaries exchanged ceremonial gifts. Zornthal stood at rigid attention, fulfilling his role as military representative while inwardly seething. When the time came for the military contingents to interact, Zornthal found himself face-to-face with the human cadets. They stood at attention, impressively disciplined for such a young species, but still so small, so fragile-looking compared to his warriors. "These are your finest?" he asked Admiral Maxwell, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "These cadets represent the top graduates from our Space Military Academy," Maxwell replied evenly. "Each has specialized in different aspects of space warfare and diplomacy." Zornthal walked along the line, examining each cadet with critical eyes. Most averted their gaze respectfully. At least they had been taught basic interspecies manners. But the 5th cadet in line, a young male with unusually dense muscle structure for a human, met his gaze directly. "You," Zornthal stopped. "Your name, human?" "Cadet Lucas Reeves, sir," the human replied, voice steady and clear. "And what makes you worthy of standing in the presence of Confederation warriors?" "With respect, Commander," Reeves replied, "the same thing that makes any being worthy, a commitment to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Murmurs rippled through the assembly hall. The cadets' words weren't technically disrespectful, but they carried a presumption of equality that grated on Zornthal. "Noble sentiments," Zornthal replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Tell me, Cadet Reeves, have you ever faced a Krellnerth raider in combat? Have you held the line against Hive drones? Have you watched your companions disintegrate in a vacuum when hull integrity fails?" "No, Commander," Reeves answered honestly. "But humanity has faced its own challenges. We've survived nuclear wars, engineered plagues, and environmental collapse. Different battlefields, same courage. That was too much." The human was directly comparing Earth's petty conflicts to the vast interstellar wars that had shaped the Confederation. Before anyone could react, Zornthal's hand shot out, striking Reeves across the face with an open palm slap that would have knocked most beings unconscious. What happened next would change the course of interspecies relations forever. Instead of crumpling to the floor, Reeves barely moved. His head turned slightly from the impact, a red mark blooming on his cheek, but his feet remained planted. More shocking still, his hand flashed up, grasping Zornthal's wrist in a grip that the grayer commander found. Impossibly, he couldn't break. With a twist and shift of weight that happened too quickly for most observers to follow, Reeves executed a perfect counter that used Zornthal's own mass against him. The mighty grayer commander found himself driven to one knee, arm locked in a submission hold, a human cadet standing over him. 3 seconds. That's all it had taken. The assembly hall froze in collective shock. No one had ever seen a grayer warrior subdued by a member of any species, let alone a human cadet. The silence was absolute. Reeves leaned down and spoke softly, so only Zornthal could hear. I could break your arm in 17 places right now, Commander. But that wouldn't serve the Confederation, would it? Then, to the astonishment of everyone, Reeves released the hold and stepped back, resuming his position in line and standing at attention as if nothing had happened. Zornthal rose slowly, his golden eyes wide with a mixture of humiliation and confusion. The muscles in his jaw worked as he struggled to process what had just occurred. Around the hall, representatives of a dozen species were whispering, reassessing, recalculating the position of humans in their mental hierarchies. Admiral Maxwell smoothly broke the tension. Commander Zornthal, I believe we have much to learn from each other. Perhaps we could continue this cultural exchange in a more structured environment. Zornthal could only nod stiffly, his pride wounded more deeply than his body. Indeed, he managed. Most illuminating. As the formal ceremony concluded and the dignitaries dispersed into smaller groups, Zornthal retreated to a private antechamber, dismissing his aides with a growl. Alone, he replayed the incident in his mind. The human strength had been abnormal, the technique flawless. But more disturbing was the restraint, the mercy. Reeves could have humiliated him completely, but chose not to. Why? The question burned in Zornthal's mind, alongside the unfamiliar sensation of doubt. 2 hours later, Zornthal sat in his private command chamber aboard the Eternal Glory, his posture rigid as he awaited his summoned guests. The wall screens displayed tactical information and ship status, but his attention was elsewhere, still dwelling on the public defeat he had suffered. The door slid open, admitting Admiral Maxwell and Cadet Reeves. Both humans saluted in their Earth Defense Force style. You requested our presence, Commander? Maxwell inquired formally. Yes. Zornthal gestured to the seats across from him, smaller than his own command chair, but he had specifically ordered human-compatible furniture to be installed. A small concession to diplomacy. Please be seated. As they sat, Zornthal studied Reeves more carefully. The young human's build was indeed unusual, denser, more compact than the other cadets. His movements were precise, controlled, betraying a level of body awareness that Zornthal had previously only observed in veteran warriors. I want to understand, Zornthal began abruptly. No human should possess the strength or skill to counter a grayer warrior, let alone a fleet commander. Explain. Maxwell looked to Reeves, who nodded slightly before speaking. I was born and raised on Ganymede. Commander, Reeves explained. It's Jupiter's largest moon, with surface gravity approximately 0.146 of Earth standard. A low-gravity environment would make you weaker, not stronger, Zornthal countered. Not the way we adapted, Reeves continued. The first human colony on Ganymede faced significant challenges. The radiation environment required our habitats to be built deep underground. To counter muscle and bone degradation, the colony implemented mandatory exercise protocols in specially designed high-gravity chambers. Maxwell picked up the narrative. 3 generations later, the Ganymede colonists had physiologically adapted. Their exercise chambers were set to approximately 3.4 times Earth gravity. Children born there spent hours daily in these conditions from infancy. Gravity adapted, Zornthal murmured, recognition dawning. Like the Threxians of Corva Prime. Similar principle, different application, Maxwell nodded. Cadet Reeves represents the third generation of gravity-adapted humans. His muscle density, bone structure, and neurological responses are all enhanced. On Earth, he would be considered exceptional. Among the Ganymede colonists, he's typical. Zornthal leaned forward. And your technique? That was no simple strength display. Reeves shifted slightly. Earth has thousands of martial arts traditions, Commander. When humanity nearly destroyed itself in the last war a century ago, we learned that power without control leads only to mutual destruction. The martial arts that survived emphasize control, leverage, and minimizing harm while neutralizing threats. You could have broken my arm, Zornthal stated. It wasn't a question. Yes. Why didn't you? Because you're not my enemy, Reeves answered simply. You're a potential ally who made an incorrect assessment based on limited information. Breaking your arm wouldn't have corrected that assessment. Zornthal fell silent, processing this information. The thought that humans, a species he had dismissed as weak newcomers, had voluntarily subjected themselves to evolutionary pressures that created soldiers comparable to the naturally evolved Greyer was disturbing. Your restraint, Zornthal finally said. We Greyer would consider it weakness. With respect, Commander, Reeves replied, restraint is only possible from a position of strength. The weak cannot choose restraint. They can only submit. Before Zornthal could respond, his communication panel chimed urgently. Lieutenant Krell's voice came through, tense and formal. Commander, security breach in Sector 7. Intruders identified as Krellnerth raiders. They've taken hostages in the diplomatic quarters and are demanding access to the ship's weapons control systems. Zornthal rose immediately. Initiate containment protocols. I'll be at command in 2 minutes. He turned to the humans. This meeting is postponed. Return to your quarters and... Commander, Reeves interrupted, standing as well. The Krellnerth, they're primarily nocturnal predators, aren't they? Evolved on a low-light world. Zornthal paused. Yes, their visual spectrum is shifted toward infrared. And your warriors are deploying with standard tactics? The containment protocol is well established, Zornthal replied stiffly. For Greyer warriors, Reeves pressed. But humans have different capabilities. We can offer an alternative approach. Admiral Maxwell watched this exchange with interest but remained silent, allowing his cadet to continue. Explain, Zornthal demanded, his tactical mind momentarily overriding his pride. Your ventilation system, Reeves said. The schematics we studied show maintenance tunnels running parallel to all major sections. They're too small for Greyer warriors, but perfect for human infiltration. I could access the diplomatic quarter undetected, while your forces create a diversion at the main entry points. Absolutely not. Zornthal dismissed the idea. This is a Confederation military matter, not an opportunity for human glory-seeking. Commander, Maxwell finally spoke, his voice calm but authoritative. You have 13 diplomatic representatives held hostage, including the Velian ambassador. The Krellnerth are known for their brutality. If Cadet Reeves can provide tactical advantages, rejecting them based on species pride seems counterproductive. Zornthal's internal conflict played across his features. Protocol demanded he maintain control of the situation, but tactical logic suggested the human plan had merit. A second alert chimed. Krell's voice again. Commander, the raiders have executed one hostage to demonstrate their resolve. They're threatening more if demands aren't met within 30 minutes. Zornthal made his decision. Admiral Maxwell, your cadet has clearance to attempt his infiltration, but under my direct command. If he deviates from approved tactics, I will consider it an act of sabotage. Understood. Maxwell nodded, then turned to Reeves. Cadet, you are authorized to assist the Confederation forces under Commander Zornthal's authority. Remember your training. Yes, Admiral, Reeves replied, then faced Zornthal. I'll need access to the maintenance schematics and communication integration with your tactical team. Lieutenant Krell will provide what you need, Zornthal said. But understand this, human. If your actions endanger this mission, the diplomatic consequences will be severe. Understood, Commander, Reeves nodded. One more thing. Do you have any light grenades rated for use in enclosed spaces? 10 minutes later, Reeves was crawling through the narrow maintenance ducts of the Eternal Glory. The fitted earpiece provided by Lieutenant Krell relayed tactical information from the Grayer Command Center, where Zornthal was personally directing the operation. Status, Cadet Reeves? Zornthal's voice came through, tense but controlled. 200 meters from the diplomatic quarter access point, Reeves whispered. No signs of tampering with the ventilation system. They don't know about these tunnels. Confirmed, Krell's voice replied. Our sensors detect 7 Krellnerth life signatures in the main chamber. 12 hostages still alive. The leader appears to be near the eastern wall. Reeves continued his careful advance, using the specialized training that had once seemed so abstract during academy exercises. The tight confines of the ventilation system would have been claustrophobic for most, but Ganymede colonists were accustomed to underground living. I'm in position, he eventually reported, peering through a ventilation grate into the diplomatic lounge. The scene below confirmed the tactical assessment. 7 Krellnerth raiders, reptilian and heavily armed, their scaled skin a mottled gray-green that helped them blend into shadows. The hostages, representatives from various Confederation species, were huddled in the center of the room, guarded by 2 raiders while the others worked on bypassing the security systems. Front team in position, came the report from the Grayer assault leader. Awaiting command. Rear containment established, added another voice. No escape routes available to hostiles. Zornthal's voice again. Execute in 30 seconds. Cadet Reeves, deploy countermeasures on my mark. Reeves carefully extracted the modified light grenades from his utility belt. Standard Confederation equipment, but he had adjusted their settings to maximize the disorienting effect on Krellnerth visual physiology. 3, 2, 1. Mark, Zornthal commanded. In one smooth motion, Reeves kicked out the ventilation grate, dropped the first grenade into the room, and shielded his eyes. The device detonated with a flash calculated to temporarily blind the Krellnerth without causing permanent damage to the hostages' varied visual systems. As the raiders reeled, disoriented and hissing in pain, Reeves dropped into the room. He rolled to absorb the impact and came up fighting, targeting the nearest guard with a precision strike to the nerve cluster at the base of its skull. The raider collapsed without firing a shot. Across the room, the main doors exploded inward as the Grayer assault team breached the entrance, their specialized armor protecting them from the lingering effects of the light grenade. Chaos erupted as the raiders tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Get down, Reeves shouted to the hostages in Confederation standard language, pulling the Velian ambassador behind a heavy diplomatic table as disruptor fire crisscrossed the room. 2 more raiders fell to the Grayer assault team's coordinated attack, but the remaining 4 had regrouped around their leader, using the hostages as shields. The leader, larger than the others, with distinctive red markings along his spine, held a neural disruptor to a Xanthian diplomat's head. Stay back, the raider leader snarled in broken Confederation standard. We leave with hostages or they die. The Grayer team hesitated, their discipline preventing them from risking the hostages. Through his earpiece, Reeves could hear Zornthal cursing, trying to find a solution that didn't involve diplomatic casualties. Commander, Reeves whispered into his communicator. I need a distraction. 3 seconds. Specify, Zornthal replied tensely. Lights. Full spectrum. Maximum intensity, 3-second burst. There was a pause, then executing in 5, 4. Reeves didn't wait for the countdown to finish. He was already moving, using the diplomatic table as a springboard to launch himself toward the ceiling. As he reached the apex of his jump, the room's lighting systems flared to blinding intensity. In that moment of universal blindness, Reeves oriented himself by sound and motion, descending directly onto the raider leader. His momentum and Ganymede-adapted strength drove both of them to the floor. Before the raider could recover, Reeves executed the same joint lock he had used on Zornthal, but with considerably more force. The Krellnerth leader howled in pain as his arm bent at an unnatural angle. His neural disruptor clattered to the floor, where Reeves kicked it away before applying additional pressure. "Order your men to surrender," Reeves demanded, his voice deadly calm. The raider snarled defiance, until Reeves increased the pressure just enough to cause a minor fracture. The sound of cracking exoskeleton was audible throughout the suddenly quiet room. "Surrender," Reeves repeated, "or I'll demonstrate what this hold can do when I'm not feeling merciful." The Krellnerth leader's survival instinct finally overcame his pride. "Stand down," he hissed to his remaining raiders. "Drop weapons." The Greyer team moved in quickly, securing the prisoners and checking the hostages for injuries. Through the open doorway, Zornthal entered, his golden eyes taking in the scene with a mixture of disbelief and newfound respect. His gaze locked with Reeves, who still held the raider leader pinned. The human's technique was unmistakably the same one that had brought Zornthal to his knees hours earlier, but applied with clinical efficiency rather than restraint. In that moment, something shifted in the Greyer commander's understanding. The human hadn't been merciful out of weakness, but out of choice, a luxury afforded to the truly powerful. As the crisis subsided and the diplomatic order was secured, Zornthal approached Reeves, who was helping a shaken Xanthian diplomat to a medical team. "Cadet." "Reeves." Zornthal's voice was formal but lacked its earlier contempt. "Your assistance was valuable." Reeves straightened and saluted in Earth Defense Force style. "Thank you, Commander. I'm glad we could resolve the situation with minimal casualties." Zornthal studied him for a long moment. "The hold you used on a raider, and Ami earlier, it could have been fatal if applied with full force." "Yes," Reeves admitted, "but that wasn't necessary in either case. Earlier today, I believed that mercy was weakness," Zornthal said slowly. "I'm beginning to reassess that position." "Wisdom often requires reassessment, Commander," Reeves replied. "The Greyer military reputation is legendary throughout the galaxy. But perhaps there are different kinds of strength worth incorporating into that legend." Something like respect flickered in Zornthal's eyes. "Report to my command chamber at 0800 tomorrow. I'll be recommending your immediate promotion to lieutenant and assignment as special liaison to my personal staff." Reeves couldn't hide his surprise. "Sir, the Confederation faces threats that require diverse approaches, Lieutenant," Zornthal said, deliberately using the higher rank. "Your perspective has proven valuable. I expect it will continue to do so." "I would be honored, Commander," Reeves replied. "Though Admiral Maxwell has already approved the transfer," Zornthal finished. "He seems to think you will provide an educational experience for my command staff." A hint of wry humor colored his tone. "I'm inclined to agree." The next morning, newly promoted Lieutenant Lucas Reeves stood before a viewport on the Eternal Glory's command deck, gazing at the blue-green sphere of Earth below. He was now dressed in a unique uniform that incorporated elements of both Earth Defense Force and Confederation military designs, a visual representation of his new role bridging two worlds. "Admiring your homeworld, Lieutenant," Zornthal's voice came from behind him. "Not my personal homeworld, Commander," Reeves replied, turning. "I was born on Ganymede, remember? But humanity's cradle, yes." Zornthal moved to stand beside him, his imposing frame making even the spacious viewport seem small. "You know, before yesterday, I looked at that planet and saw only a primitive backwater, notable primarily for its strategic position near the Orion Transit Corridor. And now," Reeves asked, "now I see the birthplace of a species that adapted itself to survive crushing gravity just to prevent muscle atrophy," Zornthal said, a hint of amazement in his voice. "A species that developed martial arts, emphasizing restraint after nearly destroying itself with war. A species that, in just 1 century of space travel, has already produced soldiers capable of defeating Greyer commanders and Krellnerth raiders." Reeves smiled slightly. "We're stubborn that way." "Indeed," Zornthal turned from a viewport to face Reeves directly. I've been in command for 32 standard years, Lieutenant. In that time, I've suppressed revolts, fought the Hive, and negotiated with beings whose very thought processes are alien to ours. I consider myself an expert on interspecies psychology. And I've never been so wrong about a species as I was about humans, Zornthal admitted. The Greyer evolved as apex predators on a high-gravity world. Our strength comes from natural selection over millennia. Yours comes from deliberate adaptation and choice, somehow more impressive for being self-inflicted. Not all humans are like me, Reeves cautioned. The Ganymede adaptations are specialized, but the philosophy behind them is universal, is it not? Zornthal pressed. This idea that strength exists to protect rather than dominate, that restraint is the true measure of power. Reeves considered this. It's an ideal we strive for. We don't always succeed. No species does, Zornthal acknowledged. But the ideal itself, it's worth incorporating into Confederation doctrine. He straightened, his formal manner returning. Which is why your liaison position is more than symbolic, Lieutenant. I expect you to challenge our tactical assumptions, to introduce these alternative perspectives on strength and its applications. Commander, Reeves said carefully, some might see that as humans attempting to change Confederation culture too quickly. Zornthal made a dismissive gesture. The Confederation has survived for 12,000 years by evolving, Lieutenant. Species that cannot adapt, he paused meaningfully, or that refuse to recognize new realities do not prosper in the long term. Then I accept the challenge, Reeves nodded, though I expect it won't always be comfortable for either of us. Comfort is overrated, Zornthal replied with unexpected humor, as I learned quite literally yesterday. For the first time since their encounter, both warrior and cadet, now commander and lieutenant, shared a genuine laugh. The tension between them finally broken. Outside the viewport, Earth continued its silent rotation against the backdrop of stars, a small blue world whose inhabitants had just fundamentally altered the power dynamics of a galactic civilization with a single act of controlled strength and deliberate mercy. In the vast game of interstellar politics, humanity had announced its presence not with conquest or technology, but with a philosophy that power without restraint was no power at all. And in the mind of at least one influential Greyer commander, the message had been received. The true importance of what had transpired in those 3 seconds, when an alien general slapped a human cadet and found himself begging for mercy, would echo through the Confederation for generations to come.